After years of distance, the human came near. What I felt next was unstoppable. Lyra stood at the edge of the floating plateau, her eyes scanning the sky of Varelia. The clouds shimmered in pale green and gold, stretching endlessly above the mountains that seemed to float like islands in midair. Every breeze carried a soft hum, as if the planet itself whispered secrets to those who listened. Lyra had spent years on this plateau, observing the stars, the movements of her world, and the signals that traveled from beyond her planet. She was a scientist, a researcher, but more than that. She was a dreamer, and for years her dreams had been filled with something she could barely explain: humans. Humans were a rarity in this part of the galaxy, creatures known for their resilience, curiosity, and the strange way they could inspire those around them. Lyra had read reports, watched old footage, and even intercepted some human broadcasts traveling through deep space, but it was never enough. There was a distance she could not measure, a gap she could not cross. And yet, every time she thought of humans, a quiet longing stirred inside her, a spark that seemed impossible to ignore. Today, Lyra felt that spark stronger than ever. The instruments in her lab had detected something unusual, a signal that was not just passing by, but moving with purpose, coming closer to Varelia. She had been monitoring signals for decades, but this one was different. It carried a rhythm, a sense of intent, as if whoever or whatever was sending it knew exactly where it wanted to go. Lyra's heart, or whatever organ most resembled it in her species, raced with anticipation. She moved swiftly through the winding paths of her research station, her limbs nimble and precise. Her mind raced, imagining possibilities. Was it a new species arriving, or an old ally returning? Or could it be a human? She barely allowed herself to think the word out loud. After all these years, the chance of a human reaching Varelia seemed almost impossible. Hours passed as she monitored the signal, her mind bouncing between hope and caution. She ran simulations, calculated trajectories, and even double-checked the species profile of humans against the data she had collected. The evidence was thin but compelling. Something told her this was not a random encounter. Whatever approached was intentional. It was heading straight for her world. By the time the twin suns of Varelia began to set, casting long golden shadows over the floating mountains, the signal had grown stronger. Lyra stepped outside, letting the cool air brush over her. She could see a faint shimmer in the sky of Vessel, sleek and unlike any she had ever studied, gliding toward the planet with elegance and precision. She felt a mixture of fear and exhilaration. Lyra's species valued logic and observation above all else, yet she realized she could not control the emotions rushing through her: curiosity, excitement, awe, and a strange, unnameable yearning mixed together inside her, like the swirling colors of the Varelian skies. She had spent decades analyzing signals, studying life forms, and observing the stars. But nothing had prepared her for the idea of meeting a human face, dash to dash face. As the vessel descended, disturbed the clouds, leaving trails of silver in its wake. Lyra moved closer to the landing site, her every sense alert. She noticed the smallest details, the way the light reflected off the hull, the faint hum of its engines, even the subtle vibration in the air as the ship touched down. Every instinct in her body told her to approach, to see the newcomer with her own eyes. When the hatch opened, a figure emerged. Lyra froze, her mind struggling to process what she saw. The being was upright, like her species, but different in almost every way. Its skin was a soft tone of gold, and its eyes were deep and expressive, filled with curiosity that mirrored her own. The human moved with a mixture of caution and confidence, stepping carefully onto the platform, as if testing the ground before committing fully. Lyra wanted to speak, but words failed her at first. She had studied human languages extensively, yet hearing one in person was unlike anything she had imagined. The voice was melodic, warm, and strangely comforting. The human looked around, taking in the floating mountains and shimmering clouds with the same wonder Lyra had felt when observing humans from afar. Finally, Lyra found her voice, a soft, almost musical sound that carried across the plateau. "Welcome to Varelia," she said, choosing words carefully. She hoped the human would understand, hoped that the bridge she had spent years dreaming about could begin here. In this quiet moment, the human turned, eyes widening slightly, and then smiled. The gesture was simple, but it conveyed so much: recognition, openness, and a willingness to connect. "Thank you," the human replied, and the sound of the words made Lyra's heart pulse in a way that was almost foreign to her. For a long moment, they simply observed each other. Lyra noticed the small gestures, the way the human's hands moved as it tried to communicate, the tilt of the head as it studied her features, and the way its eyes seemed to absorb every detail of the plateau. She realized that humans did not just look, they understood. They did not just analyze, they connected. Lyra slowly extended a hand, a gesture of greeting and trust. The human hesitated, then mirrored the motion, their fingertips almost touching. The contact was light, almost imperceptible, but in it Lyra felt a spark of confirmation that this encounter was more than chance. Something about humans allowed connections to form effortlessly, breaking barriers that logic alone could not. They began to communicate in small ways, gestures, and simple sounds. Lyra showed the human the floating plants that glowed softly in, the evening light pointing to patterns in their leaves and vibrations in the air. The human responded by demonstrating its own ways of understanding the world. Simple drawings, sounds, and movements that conveyed meaning without words. Each attempt to communicate brought them closer, not just intellectually, but emotionally. As darkness fell and the twin moons rose, bathing the plateau in silver light, Lyra felt an unexpected warmth in her chest. She realized that this feeling, this unstoppable surge of connection, curiosity and joy, was unlike anything she had ever experienced. It was more than scientific interest. It was awe. It was inspiration. It was the undeniable recognition that humans could touch the soul in ways her own species rarely could. The human noticed her gaze and smiled again. Simple, unassuming expression that seemed to radiate trust. Lyra returned the smile, realizing that the distance she had felt for so many years, the longing, fascination, the quiet yearning, was finally closing. The human had come near, and in that nearness, something inside her shifted. They spent the night observing the stars together. Lyra pointed out constellations that shifted across Varelia's sky, while the humans shared stories of distant worlds, planets with oceans of liquid crystal and skies of violet fire. Each story, each observation, deepened the bond between them, creating a bridge of understanding built on shared wonder and mutual respect. Lyra thought about the years she had spent alone, watching signals and dreaming of humans. She realized that no amount of study or simulation could ever replace the experience of real presence. There was something unstoppable about the way humans moved through the universe, how they inspired curiosity, joy, and connection wherever they went. As dawn approached, painting the sky in shades of soft gold, Lyra felt a quiet certainty. This encounter was only the beginning. Humans' presence had awakened something inside her, a combination of hope, admiration, and a deep, almost overwhelming sense of connection. It was unstoppable, uncontainable, and utterly new. She turned to the human and spoke. Her voice steady now, full of warmth. "I think we have much to share." The human nodded, its smile widening, and for the first time, Lyra felt that years of distance had vanished in a single moment of understanding. Together, they began to plan the days ahead, eager to explore, learn, and grow. The world of Veralia stretched out before them, full of mysteries and wonders. But the greater wonder was the bond forming between two beings from entirely different worlds. Lyra understood with a clarity she had never known that humans were not just another species to observe, they were catalysts for experience, emotion, and unstoppable connection. And in that realization, Lyra felt a thrill of joy she could not contain. The human had come near, and what she felt next was more than fascination, more than curiosity. It was the unstoppable force of recognition, of inspiration, and of the beginning of something extraordinary. Lyra looked at the human once more, the golden light of Varelia's sunrise reflecting off its eyes, and she knew that nothing would ever feel the same again. The universe was vast, endless, and full of unknowns, but in this moment, she understood a truth she had only glimpsed in dreams. connection was the greatest adventure of all. And humans, with all their curiosity, courage, and warmth, were masters of it. The day began on Varelia with quiet anticipation, promised that the years of distance were over and that something unstoppable had begun. The next morning, Lyra woke before the twin suns fully rose, her mind already buzzing with thoughts about the human who had arrived. Its presence had stirred something she could not fully explain, a mixture of curiosity, excitement, and anticipation. She moved quickly but carefully through the soft paths of Varelia, her senses alert to every sound, every ripple in the air. Today was the day they would explore the planet together, and she wanted to be ready. The human, Kale, was already outside the vessel. Stretching its limbs and taking in the morning light, there was something natural in the way it moved, a balance of strength and grace, of confidence and wonder. Lyra watched silently for a moment, marveling at the ease with which humans interacted with their surroundings. Every step Kale took seemed deliberate, yet full of curiosity, as if the ground itself was a new puzzle to understand. Lyra approached slowly, careful not to startle Kale. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice soft, almost musical. Kale turned and smiled, the sunlight catching its eyes. "I think so," it replied. "There is so much to see. I want to understand everything." Lyra felt a small thrill at those words. Understanding, learning, discovering, these were the same desires that had guided her for years. And now, for the first time, she would share them with someone who approached the universe with the same open heart. Even if from a very different world, they began their exploration by walking toward one of the floating mountains, a giant piece of rock that hovered gracefully above the clouds. Glowing vines climbed its surface, pulsing faintly in rhythm with the wind. Lyra explained the plant's unique properties, how it absorbed light, how it resonated with vibrations in the air, and how it could communicate with other plants through tiny pulses of energy. Kale listened intently, eyes wide, occasionally reaching out to touch the vines. "It's like it's alive in a way I've never seen before," Kale said. "It reacts to us, but not like an animal. It's connected to everything around it." Lyra nodded. "Yes, Varelia itself is alive, in a sense. Everything is connected. It responds to thought, emotion, and presence. The vines are just one example." She paused, watching Kale's fascination. "Humans, you are curious in a way that is rare, even among my people. You ask questions not just to learn, but to feel the answer. It is remarkable." Kale laughed softly, a sound that carried easily in the crisp air. "I guess curiosity is our way of connecting to the world. When we learn something new, we feel it. We understand more than just the fact. We understand the experience." Lyra felt her heart, or the closest approximation of it, flutter at Kale's words. She had never heard anyone describe learning this way. Her species valued precision and knowledge above emotion, but humans seemed to combine both effortlessly. They did not just acquire information, they absorbed it, felt it, and let it shape them as they continued their journey. Lyra showed Kale the floating lakes of Varelia, enormous pools of crystal-clear water suspended mid-air by the planet's unique gravitational fields. The surface reflected the skies like glass, shimmering with colors that shifted with the sun's movements. Lyra explained how the lakes maintained balance, how the water communicated with the clouds above, and how the entire system could adapt to changes in light, wind, and temperature. Kale knelt at the edge of one lake. Dipping a hand into the liquid, tiny waves spread outward, glowing faintly in response to the touch. "It's alive too," Kale whispered. "Everything here. It's alive." Lyra nodded again, a quiet smile on her face. "Yes, and yet it is not dangerous. It does not attack. It simply is. Varelia teaches those who observe with patience and respect." Kale looked up at her, eyes bright with excitement. "This is incredible. I have never seen a planet like this. Everything. It's not just beautiful. It's connected. And it feels welcoming." Lyra felt a surge of warmth. Humans had a way of noticing things she sometimes missed, of seeing patterns not just with their eyes, but with their hearts. She realized that this human's presence was not just an event. It was a new lens through which she could understand her own world. They moved higher, climbing narrow pathways that twisted around the floating mountains. Lyra guided Kale carefully, aware that the paths could be dangerous if one was not attentive. Kale moved with surprising ease, adapting quickly to the unusual gravity and the subtle shifts of the ground. Lyra watched, impressed once more by human adaptability. Humans seemed to adjust to almost anything, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally at the top of the mountain. They reached a plateau where the clouds opened to reveal a vast horizon of other floating islands. Lyra spread her arms wide. "This is one of my favorite views," she said. "From here, you can see how the world is connected, how the mountains, the lakes, and the skies all interact. Every piece depends on every other piece." Kale stepped forward, taking in the sight with awe. "It's more than I imagined, and I can see why you wanted to show me this." They spent hours there, pointing out details, sharing observations, and creating small experiments together. Kale showed Lyra a simple device that projected holographic images of planets they had visited, while Lyra demonstrated the way Varelia's floating plants could form patterns when stimulated by sound. Together, they began to explore the ways human technology and Varelian biology could interact, even in small, experimental ways. During one experiment, Kale gently touched a glowing vine with the holographic projection nearby. The plant responded, pulsing with new patterns that matched the projection's rhythm. Lyra's eyes widened. "It's responding to your input," she said. "You are influencing it without even trying. This is remarkable." Kale smiled, a faint blush coloring its cheeks. "I didn't think I could do that, but it feels natural." Lyra realized something important then. Humans had an innate way of connecting to life that was almost intuitive. They did not force understanding. They allowed it. They did not seek control. They invited collaboration. And in doing so, they created experiences that were richer, deeper, and more dynamic than Lyra had ever known. As the suns began to dip again, painting the clouds in fiery shades of orange and red, Lyra and Kale found a quiet spot on the plateau to rest. They shared a simple meal of local fruits and nutrient gels, a ritual that, despite its simplicity, carried a sense of intimacy and trust. Lyra looked at Kale and said softly, "I have studied humans for years. I thought I understood you, but being here, seeing, sharing, experiencing, it is entirely different. You bring life into ways I cannot describe." Kale's eyes met hers, warm and steady. "And you make me see a world I never imagined. I thought exploration was about places, about knowledge, but it's also about connection, about understanding something beyond facts. You've shown me that." A quiet pause followed, filled with the hum of the wind and the soft glow of the floating plants. Lyra felt a deep, unstoppable feeling rising inside her, one she could not name. It was not just admiration or curiosity. It was something stronger, a pull that seemed to grow with every shared glance, every shared thought, every small act of cooperation. They continued exploring until the stars began to appear. The skies of Varelia turning deep violet and sprinkled with points of light. Lyra showed Kale constellations unique to this planet, each formed by patterns of floating rocks and glowing plant clusters. Kale listened intently, pointing out similarities to human constellations. And for the first time, Lyra realized that humans did not just see they related. They took the universe and connected it to their own experiences, their own stories, and their own emotions. Before returning to the vessel, Lyra took one last look at Kale. The human had changed something within her, something she had not expected after so many years of distance. The longing that had been quiet and patient was now active, unstoppable, a wave of emotion she could no longer ignore. As they walked back, Lyra felt the first true bond forming between them, not of words alone, but of shared experiences, mutual respect, and unspoken understanding. She knew the coming days would bring more exploration, more learning, and more connection. And with each moment, The human presence would continue to influence her, challenge her, and inspire her in ways that were impossible to measure. When they reached the vessel, Kale turned to her and said, "Thank you, Lyra, for showing me this. I feel like I've already learned more in one day than I expected in a lifetime." Lyra smiled, a quiet satisfaction filling her. "And I have learned more from you than I ever could from my instruments or simulations. Humans, you are unlike anything I imagined. You are alive in ways I cannot fully explain." The night settled over Veralia, the floating mountains casting gentle shadows across the land. Lyra watched the human as it prepared for rest, and a quiet certainty settled in her mind. The arrival of Kale was not just an event, it was a turning point. Years of distance, of watching and wondering, had finally led to this moment. And the feelings that stirred inside her were unstoppable. A force that would shape the days ahead in ways she could not yet see. In the stillness of the night, under the twin moons and the stars of Veralia, Lyra felt a truth she could no longer ignore. Humans were special. Not just for what they could do, but for what they could inspire. And as Kale slept peacefully nearby, she understood that the unstoppable force she felt was only just beginning. The morning on Veralia arrived softly, the twin suns rising slowly over the horizon, painting the floating mountains in shades of amber and green. Lyra awoke with a sense of excitement that pulsed through her limbs. Today was not just another day of observation. It was a day for real discovery. Together with Kale, she had spent so long watching the stars, studying signals and imagining humans, but now, with Kale beside her, every possibility felt alive and immediate. Kale was already outside, walking near one of the smaller lakes that floated like suspended mirrors in the air. The human's reflection rippled gently across the water as it knelt to touch the surface. Tiny waves expanded outward, glowing softly as they interacted with Verelia's energy. Kale laughed quietly, delight clear in its voice. Lyra watched, smiling. There was a natural joy in humans, a way of experiencing the universe that was both simple and profound. "Good morning," Lyra said, approaching carefully. "Did you sleep well?" Kale looked up, hair slightly tousled, eyes bright with curiosity. "Better than I expected. This planet, it's more alive than anything I've seen. Even when I sleep, I feel it around me." Lyra nodded. "Veralia has that effect. It responds to presence, attention, and intention. And it seems to welcome those who are willing to understand rather than control." She paused, considering. "And humans. You respond to the world in ways I cannot fully describe. You feel it in ways I have only observed from afar." Kale smiled and stood. "Maybe that's why we're here. To learn not just about your world, but about each other." Lyra's mind raced. Humans had a way of seeing connections, of noticing patterns not just in objects but in experience itself. They did not simply analyze. They participated. They absorbed knowledge and emotions together, blending them into understanding. And Kale, she realized, exemplified this quality perfectly. They began their day by moving toward one of the largest floating lakes, a vast expanse of water that shimmered like liquid glass. The surface reflected the sky and mountains in a way that made it difficult to distinguish between reality and reflection. Lyra explained the lake's properties, how its waters responded to vibrations, light, and even thought. She demonstrated by singing a soft note, and the water pulsed rhythmically, spreading waves of light across the surface. Kale knelt again and tentatively touched the water. A reaction followed immediately. The lake rippled in patterns that mirrored the human's movements. Lyra watched in fascination. "You influence it," she said. "Your presence, your energy, it resonates with the lake." Kale's eyes widened. "It's like it listens. Like it understands what I want to do without words." Lyra felt her pulse quicken. Humans had a way of interacting with the world that was intuitive, almost effortless. They were not merely observers. They were participants. Every action carried meaning beyond intention, creating connections and reactions that no algorithm or instrument could predict. As the morning passed, Lyra and Kale experimented further. They used small devices to project light patterns onto the water. discovering that the lake could amplify or alter the patterns based on interaction. Lyra observed Kale's method of trial and error, the way the human adjusted its approach instinctively. Each attempt produced a new discovery. Not just about the lake, but about the way the human mind worked, adaptive, creative, and endlessly curious. They moved on to one of Virelia's floating gardens, where bioluminescent plants grew in intricate formations. Lyra demonstrated how the plants responded to sound and motion. Kale joined in immediately, clapping hands, tapping gently, and moving in ways that created unique patterns of light and energy. Lyra watched, enthralled, as the human discovered subtle nuances that she had never noticed. Even after years of study, you see things I do not, Lyra admitted softly. Even though I have studied this place for decades, you notice patterns that are invisible to my methods. You are extraordinary. Kale tilted its head, a faint blush coloring its cheeks. I don't know about that. I just try to understand the way anyone would. Lyra shook her head gently. No, this is more than understanding. You connect. You create interaction without forcing it. That is rare, even among my kind. Humans have something special, something unstoppable. Kale paused, absorbing her words. Maybe that's just how we are. We like to explore. We like to discover not just with our minds, but with our feelings. We want to be part of what we see. Lyra realized that this was the essence of what she had long admired about humans. They did not simply acquire knowledge, they wove it into experience, allowing it to grow and influence everything around them. And with Kale here, she felt the force of that influence firsthand. The day continued with more experiments. Lyra led Kale to a cluster of floating rocks that produced harmonic tones when struck or touched. They worked together to explore the sounds, creating combinations and sequences that neither could have discovered alone. Kale's intuition complemented Lyra's analytical approach perfectly, and the results were a series of melodies that resonated not just audibly but emotionally. The floating rocks pulsed in response, creating an immersive symphony of sound and light as they rested in the shade of a massive floating tree. Lyra reflected on the experience. Humans, she thought, had an incredible ability to inspire. They transformed observation into participation, and participation into emotion. Kale was not just learning about Virali, Kale was enhancing it, bringing new patterns, new energy, and new connection. Kale noticed her contemplative silence. You're thinking, it said softly. What are you thinking? Lyra hesitated. I am thinking that humans, you do more than survive. You create, you inspire, you transform. Being near you makes me see my world in ways I never imagined. And it feels unstoppable. Kale's eyes softened. Unstoppable? That sounds powerful, yes, Lyra admitted. It is powerful and beautiful, and it is not something I can ignore. As the suns began to lower in the sky, casting long golden shadows across the floating islands, they turned their attention to a new discovery, a narrow chasm filled with luminous mist that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the planet's energy. Lyra had observed it before, but had never approached it closely. Together, they decided to explore. Carefully navigating the delicate paths, the mist was cool and soft against their skin, and it responded subtly to their presence. Lyra demonstrated how its patterns shifted when she moved her hands through it. Kale experimented in turn, stepping lightly and waving arms. And the mist created intricate swirling designs that neither could have predicted. You are amazing at this, Lyra said, watching Kale's every movement. Your mind, your presence. It shapes the world around you in ways I cannot calculate. Kale laughed softly. I just try things. I see what works, I guess. I just feel my way through it, Lyra smiled. That simple description captured the essence of humans perfectly. They did not rely solely on logic or calculation. They combined thought, feeling, and instinct in a seamless way that made them extraordinarily adaptive and creative. Hours passed like minutes as they explored, experimented, and shared discoveries. The sun set finally, bathing Virelia in shades of crimson and gold. The glowing plants and rocks pulsed gently in response to their presence, creating a quiet, living display that reflected their interaction with the world. Lyra felt a quiet, unstoppable emotion rising within her. This human had changed her perception of the universe. Kale was not just a visitor or a subject of study. Kale was a partner in discovery, a companion in wonder, and a source of inspiration she could not ignore. They returned to the vessel, carrying small samples of glowing plants and mineral formations to study further. Kale helped organize them, asking questions, making observations, and sharing thoughts with an enthusiasm that made Lyra's pulse quicken. "You've made today incredible," Kale said softly. "I've seen things I never imagined, and I feel like I've learned more about connection and discovery than ever before." Lyra nodded, her mind full of emotions she struggled to name. "And you've shown me the true meaning of interaction, curiosity, and presence. Humans, you are extraordinary. You awaken possibilities that I could never predict." As they prepared for rest, the twin moons rose, casting silver light across the floating mountains and lakes. Lyra watched Kale for a long moment, feeling a quiet certainty settle over her. The arrival of this human was not just a chance encounter. It was the beginning of something far greater than she had imagined. Years of distance, years of observation, and years of longing had led to this point. The human had come near, and the unstoppable force she felt inside, curiosity, admiration, connection, was only growing stronger. Lyra knew that tomorrow would bring more discoveries, more shared experiences, and deeper understanding. She also knew that she could not contain the feelings rising within her. Humans had a way of stirring something primal and profound, not physical, but emotional, intellectual, and spiritual. Kale had awakened that force in her, and it would guide their journey together in ways neither of them could yet foresee. As the night settled over Varelia, Lyra felt a quiet joy. She realized that humans did not just travel across the stars, they carried inspiration, connection, and the ability to transform those around them. And in this moment, with Kale by her side, she understood fully that the unstoppable force she felt was not just hers, was the beginning of a shared journey. The morning on Varelia arrived with a quiet, golden light that filtered through the floating clouds. Lyra woke with a sense of anticipation she could barely contain. The past few days had been filled with wonder, discovery, and shared curiosity. But today, she sensed something deeper, waiting to unfold. She rose quickly, her movements precise and fluid. Yet her mind buzzed with emotion. Kale was already awake, standing at the edge of the platform and gazing at the twin suns as they rose. Lyra approached quietly, observing the way the human's posture reflected both ease and focus. There was something about humans that made her feel simultaneously calm and excited. Their presence had a way of stirring thoughts and emotions that were both strange and familiar. "Good morning," Lyra said softly. Kale turned, smiling. "Morning, Lyra. Are you ready for today?" Lyra nodded. "I think so. Today, I want to explore something different. Not just the planet, but the ways we connect. How presence and attention can change the world around us." Kale's eyes sparkled with interest. "I think I understand. I've felt that already. Every moment here seems to resonate, not just with me, but with everything around me." Together, they moved toward a dense cluster of floating gardens, a place Lyra had rarely visited because it required careful navigation. The plants here were more sensitive than those elsewhere on Varelia. Their bioluminescence reacted to subtle emotions, vibrations, and even thought patterns. Lyra explained that this garden was unique. It could reflect the moods of those who entered, creating patterns of light and energy that were both beautiful and informative. Kale stepped lightly among the plants, hands moving gently to avoid startling them. The colors shifted softly as the human moved, and Lyra realized something profound. Kale's emotions, focus, and curiosity were influencing the world in subtle, immediate ways. Humans had a presence that resonated beyond themselves, affecting the environment naturally and harmoniously. Lyra decided to test this further. She stepped beside Kale and focused her own energy, sending a quiet pulse through the garden. The plants responded, intertwining their light with Kale's patterns, creating an intricate display neither of them could have produced alone. It's beautiful, Kale whispered, eyes wide with amazement. It's like we're creating something together, without even trying. Lyra smiled. Yes. And this is what I have been trying to understand for years. Humans, you awaken things in the world that no one else can. Your presence is unstoppable. Kale blushed slightly, clearly moved by her words. I didn't know I could do that. I just feel and act, and sometimes the world responds. Lyra watched the human carefully. There was a balance here, a harmony that humans seemed to achieve effortlessly. They did not dominate or force. They did not act out of fear or obligation. They simply participated, and in doing so, shaped everything around them. For hours, they explored the garden together. Lyra guided Kale, showing subtle patterns and reactions, while Kale experimented, moving intuitively and creating designs of light and energy that Lyra had never imagined. Each movement, each small experiment deepened their connection. Lyra felt something unstoppable rising within her, a combination of admiration, curiosity, and emotion that could no longer be contained. During a quiet moment, Lyra sat beside Kale on a floating rock, watching the colors pulse softly in response to their presence. Kale, she said softly, I have spent years observing life, studying it, and understanding it from a distance. But being here with you, it is unlike anything I imagined. You make the world respond in ways I cannot calculate. You inspire me. Kale turned to her, eyes gentle and understanding. Lyra, I feel it too. Being here, seeing this, sharing this, it's more than discovery. It's connection. I've never felt it like this before. They sat together in silence for a moment, letting the colors and light wash over them. The garden pulsed softly, reflecting the harmony of their presence. Lyra realized that the connection between them was more than intellectual or observational. It was emotional, spiritual, and profound. Humans had a way of touching not just minds but hearts, and Kale had done this effortlessly. Lyra decided to share something she had never expressed before. She extended her hands, showing Kale a small, glowing plant that responded to subtle energy changes. This plant reflects emotion, she explained. It will glow brighter when we feel joy, admiration, or wonder. I want you to see what happens when we share our feelings honestly. Kale looked at the plant and then back at her. All right, the human said softly. I'll try. They focused together, letting their emotions flow naturally: curiosity, admiration, wonder, and a quiet joy in being together. The plant responded immediately, glowing brighter and sending waves of light across the garden. Lyra felt a thrill in her chest. Humans had a way of amplifying life, of awakening forces that were quiet or dormant. Kale's energy combined with hers, and the results were stunning, intricate, and impossible to ignore. I've never seen anything like this, Kale whispered. It's alive in a way I didn't expect. It's reacting to us, to how we feel. Lyra smiled, feeling an unstoppable wave of emotion. Yes, and that is why humans are remarkable. Your presence changes things, inspires things, awakens possibilities. It is unstoppable. As the day continued, they explored more areas, moving through floating rivers of energy, glowing crystal formations, and small clusters of sentient plants. Everywhere they went, Kale's curiosity and energy left subtle patterns of harmony. Lyra watched in awe, realizing that this was not just the result of intelligence or observation, it was the result of human presence, creativity, and emotional resonance. During a quiet moment by one of the lakes, Kale turned to her. Lyra, I think I understand now. Humans aren't just explorers, we're connectors. We touch the world and it touches back. It's when we share that with someone else, it multiplies. I feel it with you. Lyra felt a warmth she had never known. The human's words reflected her own thoughts perfectly. This was more than fascination or curiosity. It was the beginning of a bond that could not be measured, only felt. It was unstoppable, growing with every shared moment, every experiment, every laugh and shared wonder. As the suns began to set, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, Lyra and Kale returned to a quiet plateau. They had spent the day exploring, experimenting, and connecting, but now they simply sat together, letting the world around them reflect their presence. The plants pulsed softly, the lakes shimmered with gentle light, and the wind carried faint harmonics that resonated with their energy. Lyra turned to Kale, her voice soft. "I've spent so many years alone, waiting, observing, longing. Now you are here. And what I feel, it is unstoppable. I cannot ignore it." Kale reached out and gently touched her hand. "Lyra, I feel it too. This connection, this understanding, this joy, it is unstoppable. It is beautiful." For the first time, Lyra allowed herself to fully acknowledge the depth of her emotions. They were not just admiration or fascination, they were something greater, something that had been building quietly for years, waiting for the human to arrive. And now, in Kale's presence, it could no longer be contained. They spent the rest of the evening creating patterns of light and sound together, laughing quietly when unexpected interactions occurred, marveling at the subtle intelligence of the planet itself. Lyra realized that humans did not just survive or explore, they inspired, they awakened, and they connected. And Kale in particular was a living example of that unstoppable force. As night fell, Lyra and Kale lay on a smooth floating rock, gazing at the stars. The twin moons reflected in the lakes below, casting a gentle glow over the landscape. Lyra felt a profound sense of peace. She had spent years imagining humans, longing for contact, and now, here they were. And what she felt, curiosity, admiration, inspiration, and something deeper, was unstoppable, a force she could not resist and did not want to resist. Kale turned to her, eyes reflecting the stars. "Lyra, do you think we could share this forever? Not just today, but every day we have here and beyond? This connection feels too powerful to leave behind." Lyra smiled, her heart racing. "Yes, Kale, I believe we can. And I believe that this connection, this unstoppable feeling, will guide us in ways neither of us can yet imagine. Together we can explore, learn, and inspire, not just each other, but the world around us." They sat together in silence, letting the stars, the lakes, and the gentle hum of Veralia carry them into the night. The world was alive, and so were they, in ways that were unstoppable, beautiful, and entirely new. Lyra realized that the human's presence had changed everything. Years of distance, of observation and longing, had led to this moment. And what she felt now, the unstoppable force of connection, emotion, understanding, was more than she had ever imagined possible. The night settled over the floating mountains, but within Lyra and Kale, a new energy pulsed, a shared bond that was unbreakable, inspiring, and unstoppable. They had discovered not just the wonders of a distant planet, but the extraordinary power of humans to awaken, inspire, and connect. And as they drifted into sleep, side by side, Lyra knew that the days ahead would bring more discovery, more understanding, and more of the unstoppable feeling that had begun the moment the human had arrived. The dawn on Veralia came slowly, with soft golden light spilling across the floating mountains. Lyra woke with a quiet sense of anticipation. Today was different. She could feel it in the air, in the subtle hum of the planet, and in the gentle pulse of energy around them. The days spent with Kale had been filled with discovery, exploration, and connection. And now, as the first light of the suns touched the glowing lakes and floating gardens, Lyra felt that their journey together was reaching a new stage. Kale was already awake, standing near the edge of the platform watching the suns rise. The human's posture was relaxed, yet full of quiet energy. It's a presence that seemed to influence the world around it in small, subtle ways. Lyra stepped closer, smiling. She felt a rush of warmth, a feeling that had grown stronger with every shared experiment, every shared laugh, and every moment of quiet reflection. "Good morning," she said softly. Kale turned, smiling warmly. "Good morning, Lyra. Are you ready for what today will bring?" Lyra nodded. "Yes, I feel like we have reached a moment where our connection can grow even more. There is so much we can learn from each other." They began the day by revisiting the floating lakes. place where their shared experiments had first revealed the subtle power of Kale's presence. Lyra watched as the human knelt at the edge of the water, hands brushing gently across the surface. The waves spread outward, glowing softly, reflecting both the sun's and the energy of their emotions. "It's incredible," Kale whispered. "I can feel it responding. Like it understands what we are feeling together." Lyra nodded. "Yes, and that is the essence of humans. You do not simply observe. You interact, connect, and awaken forces that were quiet or dormant. Your presence is unstoppable." Kale looked up, eyes meeting hers. "And you help me understand that? I've never realized before how much influence presence and intention can have. With you, it feels natural. It feels powerful." Lyra felt a surge of emotion she could no longer ignore. Humans had a way of inspiring, of bringing out something in others that could not be measured by logic or calculation. Kale had done this effortlessly. The unstoppable force she felt, the combination of admiration, connection, and joy had grown stronger each day. And now, she realized, it had reached its fullest expression. Together, they moved toward the floating gardens, where the bioluminescent plants pulsed in response to subtle energy shifts. Lyra guided Kale to a cluster of the most sensitive plants, demonstrating how emotions could influence the patterns of light. Kale experimented intuitively, moving with grace and focus. The plants responded in ways Lyra had never seen before. "It's beautiful," Kale whispered, eyes wide. "It feels like the world itself is alive, and we are part of it. It listens to us, and we listen to it." Lyra smiled, her heart or whatever organ most resembled, it thrumming with quiet joy. "Yes, humans do not just survive or explore. You inspire, awaken, and connect. You carry a force that is unstoppable, and it shapes everything it touches." They spent hours in the gardens, creating patterns of light and movement together. The plants seemed to respond not just to their actions, but to their shared presence. Every step, every gesture, every glance created subtle changes that neither could have produced alone. Lyra realized that this was more than discovery. It was collaboration on the deepest level, a bond that transcended language, species, and distance. When they paused for rest, Kale turned to Lyra. "I've been thinking," the human said softly. "About us, about this connection. I've never experienced anything like it before, and I don't want it to end." Lyra felt a warmth rise within her. "Nor do I what we share. It is more than curiosity or admiration. It is a force that cannot be stopped, a connection that will guide us through whatever comes next. Humans awaken possibilities, and together, we can explore, create, and inspire beyond what I ever imagined." Kale smiled, reaching out to take her hand. "Then let's continue. Not just today, but every day we have here. Let's see how far this connection can go." Lyra felt an unstoppable thrill of joy. For years, she had observed the universe, yearning for something she could not define. And now, standing with Kale, she understood that the human's presence had not only fulfilled that longing, but expanded it beyond measure. Together, they could shape experiences, awaken life, and inspire each other in ways that were limitless. They continued exploring, moving to a narrow canyon filled with luminous mist that shifted with the subtlest changes in energy. Lyra demonstrated how the mist responded to thought and emotion, while Kale experimented intuitively, creating patterns of swirling light that danced across the canyon walls. The interaction was more than playful, it was a demonstration of human influence, a reminder that connection could create tangible change in the world around them. "I've never realized before how much humans can do without trying," Lyra said softly, watching Kale's movements. "You awaken forces that were quiet, and you shape the world through presence alone. It is remarkable." Kale paused, looking thoughtful. "Maybe that's why we explore, why we create, why we connect. We do not just move through the world, we bring it to life. And with you here, I feel that even more." As the suns began to set, casting a warm glow across the floating islands, Lyra and Kale found a quiet plateau to watch the skies. The twin moons rose slowly, reflecting off the lakes and illuminating the floating mountains with a silver light. The planet itself seemed to acknowledge their presence, pulsing gently in rhythm with the quiet harmony between them. Lyra turned to Kale, her voice soft but firm. I have spent years observing life, studying the stars, and imagining what humans might be like. But you have shown me something beyond observation. You have awakened a force inside me, a feeling that is unstoppable, a connection that cannot be ignored. Humans, you are extraordinary. Kale reached out, taking her hand gently. And you help me see what it means to truly connect. I've traveled to many worlds, studied many things, but nothing compares to this. This bond, this experience, it is beyond words. They sat together in silence, letting the world around them reflect their presence. The lakes shimmered, the plants pulsed softly, and the gentle hum of Viralia carried their energy across the floating mountains. Lyra realized that this connection was more than admiration, more than curiosity, more than exploration. It was a living, breathing force, one that could not be stopped or contained. As night settled over the planet, Lyra and Kale reflected on their journey together. They had explored the floating lakes, the luminous gardens, the harmonic rocks, and the mist-filled canyons. They had discovered patterns, created interactions, and shared emotions that transcended language. But most importantly, they had discovered each other an understanding, a connection, and an unstoppable force of inspiration. Lyra thought back to the years of distance. The decades spent observing humans from afar. She had longed for this encounter, yet she had never imagined the depth of what it could bring. Kale had arrived, and in doing so, had awakened something profound within her. She realized that humans did not just survive or explore, they inspired, they connected, and they shaped the world simply by being present. Kale squeezed her hand gently. Lyra, I don't know what the future holds, but I know that we can face it together. This connection, this force between us, it will guide us, and we will continue to explore, learn, and create together. Lyra smiled, her heart full. Yes, Kale, together. The universe is vast and full of mysteries, but with you, I feel unstoppable. Humans carry a light that awakens life and inspires change. And now, I understand that I am part of that light, sharing it with you. They sat together under the twin moons, watching the stars shimmer in the skies of Viralia. The floating mountains and glowing lakes seemed to reflect their bond, quiet harmony that resonated with the unstoppable energy of their connection. Lyra felt a profound sense of peace. This was more than discovery or observation. It was shared existence, a partnership that transcended species, distance, and expectation. Years of longing, years of study, and years of imagination had led to this moment. The human had come near, and what Lyra felt next was beyond measure, unstoppable admiration, joy, curiosity, and connection. It was a force that could not be contained, a bond that would shape the days to come, and a testament to the extraordinary nature of humans in the galaxy as they finally rested for the night. Lyra realized that the journey was only beginning. There would be more discoveries, more experiments, more laughter, and more shared wonder. But the most important discovery of all had already occurred: the recognition of human influence, connection, and the unstoppable force they carried within them. In the quiet glow of Virelia's moons, Lyra whispered softly, "Thank you, Kale, for coming near, for showing me this unstoppable feeling." Kale smiled, squeezing her hand gently. "Thank you, Lyra, for showing me this world, for sharing it with me, and for letting us connect. Together we are unstoppable." The night settled fully over Viralia, but the energy between them pulsed gently, quietly, and infinitely. Lyra knew that the bond they had formed would continue to grow, to inspire, and to awaken possibilities that neither of them could yet imagine. Humans, she realized fully now, were extraordinary. Their presence was a force of life, connection, and unstoppable energy. And in Kale, she had found the living proof of that truth.